A husband and wife took their infant daughter into the towering redwoods and then vanished without a trace. For 4 years, the case sat cold, a whispered local legend, until a team of mycology students paused beside a tree and photographed a gelatinous bloom that did not belong. That aberration, bright as sulfur and reeking of rot, would pull a thread that unraveled the truth hidden beneath the forest floor. The first calls to Serena Quade's phone began with impatience, not fear. It was late August 2013, and her mother, Odelia Hastings, expected a check-in after the easy 3-day itinerary Serena and her husband, Kalen Van Craftoft, had planned in Redwood National and State Parks. They were experienced travelers. Kalen, 33, worked in environmental consulting, and Serena, 32, a cautious graphic designer since Isla's birth, trusted his competence on well-marked, stroller-friendly trails. Even when reception was poor, Serena and Kalen always found a way to send a text. That evening, Odelia's calls rolled to voicemail for both of them. By morning, irritation had congealed into dread. She filed a missing persons report, and rangers located the couple's car parked neatly at a trailhead corresponding to the last pinged photo. It was locked, unruffled, a promise of return that had never been kept. The investigators' first real lead came from the cloud. One image had uploaded 2 days earlier. Kalen, smiling, shaved head catching soft canopy light, beige shorts and a muted green t-shirt, Isla facing the camera in a gray chest carrier with a pink bow headband, Serena beside him in bright blue, one arm around his back, the other hand on the carrier. The perspective made it clear a stranger had pressed the shutter. Rangers canvassed the spot the metadata tagged and found the vehicle. They also blasted the photo to the public, asking the unknown photographer to come forward. Weeks later, a German tourist identified himself. He remembered the cheerful couple and the baby with the pink headband. He had taken their picture and watched them continue down the main trail. Nothing seemed amiss. The promising lead dissolved into ordinary chance. The search that followed was vast and punishing. Redwood National and State Parks sprawl across 139,000 acres of ravines, huckleberry thickets, and colonnades of trees so tall they trap daylight. Helicopters were useless beneath that canopy. K-9 teams lost scent in the needle mulch. Visibility shrank to yards. For days, then weeks, teams swept and reswept and found nothing. No bottle, no fiber, no diaper. The forest gave back no trace. Detectives chased other possibilities. Deep in a protected sector, trackers uncovered recent burl poaching, a black market trade that turns ancient redwood tumors into cash. Maybe the family had stumbled on criminals guarding their cut. The theory fit the silence of the woods, but informants and timelines refused to bend to it. With autumn coming and resources thinning, the active search was scaled back. The forest, as it often does, kept its secret. 4 summers later, in 2017, a grad team from Oregon studying post-fire fungal succession pushed far beyond the tourist loops. Led by meticulous field biologist Xander Zeller, they hiked hours through wet duff and steep switchbacks, then dropped their packs near a rare oak in a redwood basin. Zeller noticed it first, a swollen, lumpy mass at the roots, yellow and white marbled with tarry black, glistening as if exhaling. The smell stabbed through the cold air, sweet, putrid, unmistakably death. They documented the anomaly, debated slime mold versus toxic bloom, and, after consulting a park botanist that evening, returned with shovels and core samplers. A large carcass, the botanist theorized, could be fueling a spectacular nutrient pulse. The soil gave easily until a blade caught on something that flexed. Black, heavy plastic emerged from the loam. Industrial tarp, layered and sealed. Zeller slid a seam. The trapped gases hissed free, and the outline of a human form appeared. The students stopped, called it in, and waited in a silence that felt suddenly predatory. It took an airlift and hours of hiking to bring forensic teams to the site. Under field tents, investigators documented the bizarre fungal bloom, then exhumed a parcel wrapped with practiced care. Back at the medical examiner's office, dental records made the match. The remains were those of Kalen Van Craftoft, 4 years missing, found at last, entombed in plastic in a cradle of roots. Autopsy brought paradox. The skeleton showed no gunshot trauma, no knife nicks, no fractures from blunt force, an intact hyoid. Toxicologists turned to marrow and the dark fluids preserved within the tarp. Weeks later, results returned. Concentrated compounds consistent with crotalus venom. Rattlesnakes exist in Northern California, but rarely haunt the cold, dim groves of redwoods. Experts said fatal envenomation there was improbable, not impossible. The cause of death clarified, the context grew stranger. If Kalen had died from a snakebite on the trail, who buried him so deliberately, and where were Serena and Isla? The grave's construction, depth, layering, industrial tarp, suggested time, tools, and a sense of safety. Forensic technicians focused on the tarp, the one artifact unquestionably imported from elsewhere. Embedded in its fibers and caked in outer folds, they found 2 signatures: microscopic volcanic rock dust and residues of aged diesel. The plastic itself was heavy, UV-resistant, agricultural grade. Investigators mapped where that volcanic soil naturally occurs in the region, cross-checked diesel-reliant homesteads and logging remnants, and traced the distribution of that specific tarp through rural suppliers. The Venn diagram shrank to a scattering of properties reachable by old tracks and hidden behind walls of trees. One, 8 miles from the grave as the crow flies, matched everything. County records named the owner, Juan Ural, late 50s, a reclusive, off-grid holdout with a reputation for volatility. Detectives drove the rutted track under a wildfire-sober pretext, routine fire safety checks. The homestead sprawled in rusting machinery and sheds. The soil underfoot gleamed the same reddish volcanic tint as the trace on the tarp. Near a leaning outbuilding, a tractor sat half-covered with black plastic that felt identical to the grave wrap. A scarred diesel tank slumped nearby. They made polite departures, then secured a warrant. For 48 hours they watched, confirming Ural was alone. Before dawn, a tactical team breached the cabin and detained him without incident. The search ground on for hours through the main room's hoard and the outbuilding's clutter. Forensics confirmed the on-site tarp matched the grave's material. Soil samples matched too. Yet there was no sign of Serena or Isla. Late in the day, a detective rolled back a threadbare rug in the kitchen and found screws that had been turned and turned again. A hidden hatch yawned open. Beneath the floor, a cramped root cellar smelled of earth and old jars, and faintly, horribly, of decomposition. In the far corner, under burlap, were human remains. Clothing remnants matched what Serena wore in the last photo. Dental records later erased doubt. Ligature marks and a fractured hyoid told their own brutal story. She had been restrained and strangled. In crates nearby, investigators found her blue waist pack with her ID, a bundle of infant clothes, and a distinctive handmade blanket. Under questioning, Ural first denied everything, then deflected with impossible timelines. Confronted with the bodies and the forensic trail, he began to talk. He described a night in August 2013 when frantic shouting reached his cabin. Serena, disoriented, stumbled from the forest carrying 6-month-old Isla and pleading for help. She told him Kaylin had been bitten by a rattlesnake after sitting on it in brush while they rested off-trail. By the time she found the homestead, Kaylin had gone still. Urao claimed he took a rifle and flashlight and followed Serena back, only to confirm that Kaylin was dead, the bite swollen and livid. In his confession, he said drunken opportunism took over. Instead of calling for help with the satellite phone he owned, he forced Serena and the baby back to the cabin at gunpoint. He kept them overnight, assaulted Serena, then, sober and cornered by his own crimes, strangled her in the cellar and hid her beneath the dirt. He returned for Kaylin with a roll of agricultural tarp, wrapped the body tightly, and dug deep near that lonely oak, confident the canopy and distance would hide the grave. His choices explained the paradox: an accidental death followed by calculated violence and concealment. But one question remained unbearable. Where was Isla? The cellar held her clothes and blanket, but no remains. In the interview room, Urao claimed he had not killed the baby. He said that after murdering Serena, he panicked at the thought of another death, packed supplies, and drove south with the infant. He crossed into Mexico, he insisted, and delivered Isla to a small orphanage in the state of Oaxaca under a false story, leaving no real name. Investigators doubted him, but had to check. Records and receipts showed he had indeed traveled deep into Mexico for nearly 2 weeks soon after the disappearance. The blanket's weave matched the region. Despite that partial corroboration, tracing a 6-month-old left without paperwork in a rural system years earlier proved agonizing. International authorities canvassed orphanages and registries, compared dates and features, and found no definitive match. Meanwhile, the physical evidence against Urao was overwhelming. He pled guilty to the murder of Serena Quaid, kidnapping and sexual assault, and the clandestine disposal of Kaylin Van Craftoft's body. The sentence was life without the possibility of parole. The case closed on paper. For Odelia Hastings, closure never arrived. She had a grave for her son-in-law and one for her daughter, but her granddaughter's fate remained a question that echoed through every holiday and quiet mourning. The Redwoods continued their patient work, knitting fallen limbs into soil, raising new crowns toward fog, indifferent to human grief. 4 years of silence had ended, but a single absence kept speaking. Somewhere, perhaps, lived a child who once wore a pink headband in a sunless grove. The file remains open for Isla, a line item with a heartbeat. DNA kits mailed, tips chased, doors knocked in 2 countries. What began as a hike became a warning about chance, isolation, and predation.